This is The Showcase, a new series where I'll be taking a specific artist or producer, having a look at their history and achievements before finally showing you how to make a beat in the style of them. I'm going to be dropping one episode of The Showcase each month, so if there's any artists or producers that you'd like to see featured, then make sure to let me know below in the comments. This episode of The Showcase is going to focus on the iconic hip-hop producer Scott Storch. Famous for working on hits such as Candy Shop by 50 Cent, Naughty Girl by Beyonce, and Still Dre, Scott Storch says that his love for music started with the piano, which he began playing at a very young age. He joined hip-hop group The Roots as a keyboardist when he was 21, and this allowed him to network with people inside of the music industry. By the late 90s, Scott had left The Roots and was pursuing a career as a music producer. This would lead to his first true big hit in 1999 with Still Dre. Scott was able to develop his own signature sound when he transferred his classical piano skills over to synthesized instruments. His knowledge of classical piano allowed him to create these dark but melodic beats that had depth and hit hard. The turn of the millennium would see Scott go on to work with artists like Chris Brown, Alicia Keys, and R. Kelly, proving how versatile he was when it came to making beats. In recent years, Scott Storch has by no means slowed down, with him having worked on platinum records with new school artists like Tory Lanez, Post Malone, and 6ix9ine. A lot of the videos that I've seen of Scott Storch see him starting with a drum pattern and then adding his melodies on top. The pattern that I put together only has a few elements, and I'm relying more on them working together to create a nice bounce. To begin with, I wanted a really simple snare pattern, so I've just dropped my notes on the second and fourth beat of every bar. I then layered this snare sample with a rim, and this gave me a more fixed sound. Next, I layered in some hi-hats and a shaker to give my pattern some rhythm. These three layers are creating a sort of back and forth feel, giving me that bounce that I'm looking for. As always, I've played around with the velocity of my notes, making them sound more human and less robotic. Next, I added two percussive sounds to just sit in any of the leftover pockets of space. The sounds that I chose are this clicky sound, and then a bongo. And I just dotted these around wherever I thought they'd sound good. Once again, you'll see that I've messed around with the velocities to help give the percussion a more human feel. Then the last drum element is of course the kick. This pattern starts off quite simple, and then towards the end of each 4 bars, I added more kicks to build up the energy a bit. I then just added a very simple 808 pattern to serve as a placeholder until I sort out the melody. Next, I needed to think about a melody. I wanted to go with a sort of old school vibe, so I chose this key sound from Mellotron. These chords may look quite complicated, but they're simply just going from a D sharp minor down to an A sharp minor. I've also delayed these chords so they come in just after these root note stabs. Onto these chords, I've just got an EQ that's cutting out the low end and a bit of reverb from Valhalla Vintage. Many videos of Scott Storch see him playing these super catchy lead lines over the top of his melodies. I wanted a similar lead line in my beat, so I chose this flute sound from F No World. The pattern for this is actually quite simple, just going up and down between this D sharp and F sharp. You'll see that I do go out of this range a couple of times, but this is just to add variation. To begin with, the high end of this flute had some noise that I didn't want kept in, so I used my EQ to cut it out. Next, I added RC20 with a slightly tweaked vinyl 3 preset. All I did here was turn the noise all the way down and crank the width knob. Some reverb from Valhalla Vintage. Then lastly, I added guitar rig with the vocal space preset. The next sound I chose to add is this pizzicato string from the Korg Triton. Storch would often play arpeggiated melodies on top of his chords, and that's what I was going for with this layer. These types of melodies that go up and down the scale become really easy to remember and lead to your final track being more catchy. Onto these strings, I've once again gone with the vocal space preset from Guitar Rig. Then I'm just using RC20 to add some wobble, distortion, and width to the sound. The next layer I added is this ethnic string sound from Heat Up 3. All this sound is doing is playing the A sharp note on the last half beat of each bar. This then just has RC20 with a little bit of wobble and width, and then some reverb from Valhalla Vintage. The last two melodic elements that I chose are some strings and a harp. Both of these sounds are going to play the same melody, which is just going down from F sharp to A sharp. These layers are kind of like fills that will come in at the end of a 4-bar section. In my arrangement, I've just alternated which sound plays the melody each time to add some variation. The last thing I added to this beat was my bass line. For this, I'm actually layering 2 bass sounds together. I first have this sub bass, which is quite deep. I then just layered this with another bass sound that contains more mid and high frequencies. These bass tracks are both being sidechained to my kick using shaper box, so my kick punches through the mix nicely. And yeah, that is going to bring us to the end of the video. I'd love to know your thoughts on the showcase as a series, so let me know in the comments whether you found this one interesting. Also, feel free to let me know of any artists or producers that you'd like to see featured on future episodes. Just a reminder that my 5K giveaway is still open until the 19th of September, so if you haven't already entered, I'll leave some info for that in the description. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful, then please hit the like button before you leave, and if you're new to the channel, then do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. If you'd like to know more about how I make my chord progressions, and I'll leave a link to that video up here, then I'll just leave you a random video from the channel down here. I've been Era, I hope you all have a productive week, and I'll catch you in the next one.